Hi, and welcome to Absolute Beginners Tutorials. Today we are going to learn how to transform brain signals into animated visualizations. Better say, we're going to see how to put pieces together. My name is Matteo Mazzanti, and I'm a member of the MindLAB space, a community of people who likes to play with brain-computer interfaces and software, and so on. The setup we are going to use today is really simple in order to make it easy. It's also affordable and it's based on an open source stack. OpenBCI is a company that produces brain-computer interface devices based on open source design of their circuitry, the electronics. OSC is a protocol that allows to stream data from the OpenBCI component to the processing component. Processing is a platform, a software, that allows to generate visualization starting from source code. In order to achieve our goal in the most simplest way, we're going to use a software called OpenBCI Graphical User Interface. Again, it's an open source software and it is produced by the same manufacturer that produced the brain-computer interface device. It is the responsibility of this software to acquire the brain signals in the format as it comes from the device and then to transform it into the open sound control format and to send it out to processing. So the brain signal is coming from the device, is acquiring our PC through the Bluetooth channel, is acquired into this software, it is transformed into the OSC format, and then it is sent out. And it is acquired in processing thanks to a library, again an open source one, that allows processing to read open sound control sources. In order to implement our physical setup, we need a brain-computer interface, we need the USB dongle, that you can remember is basically a USB key that allows Bluetooth communication between the laptop and the device. And we need a laptop. Now, any kind of operating system is okay. It can be Linux, macOS, or Windows, because both OpenBCI graphical user interface software and processing software, they both run on any of these three operating systems. This is what we are going to do in this Absolute Beginners tutorial. We are going to download and install the OpenBCI graphical user interface software, the same for processing, the same for the library that allows processing to read OSC data streams, and then we will download a sketch, a piece of software, a little script for processing that implements a receiver. Then we will start the graphical user interface software, we will set the OSC output, and we will receive the signal in processing. Let's start. Let's download as first step the OpenBCI graphical user interface software that can be found at this address. Nowadays the page where you can download the software look like this, and as you can see, it's available for the major operating system platform. In my case, I'm running a Linux distribution, so I will hit this button and I will start the download like this. I have previously downloaded in order to shorten the demo. So let's see how to install it. First things should be extracted because it's a zip file. And once it has been extracted, I can run it. I have to run it as an administrator. So sudo and the OpenBCI graphical user interface software starts. And this is how it looks like. Now, we can see that it's running if we see this screen, and then we can decide which data source we have, which device we want to use in order to acquire the signal. We could use a real device, for example via Bluetooth. In this case I have a Bluetooth device that I just switched on. But we could use a previously recorded file of data, or we could simulate our device completely. And in this case there won't be any need for a real device, but just the software. And this is really useful for development proposal. Here is how it looks like. Okay. This step is accomplished. The second step of our plan is to download and install processing. So we can reach this link, and this is how the page looks like today. As you can see, processing is available for the major platform, and as I'm running a Linux distribution, I hit this button and I will be prompted with the download window. I already downloaded before to shorten the demo, so let's look how to install it. Again, we need to unzip the archive, and once it has been unzipped, we can navigate to the software root folder, and then we run as an administrator the script install sh, that is basically this script that will install the software in our distribution for us. So sudo like this. I already did this step before to shorten the things, and we can look how processing looks like. When the software starts, it looks like a text editor. Here in this space is where the software will be written, the software that will generate the visualization. One important note: in preferences you can set where processing is expected to find its environment. In this folder there is a folder called libraries, and here is where processing expects to find the libraries that are needed. In sandbox is where it is expecting to find the sketches. A sketch is basically a script that will generate a visualization. Okay, so the second step is accomplished. Let's go and fetch the library that we need in processing in order to receive an open sound control signal. The third step is to download the library that will allow processing to use an open sound control stream inside of the processing itself. So we go and get the library. This is the address where the library is available. And the page today looks more or less like this. I would say exactly like this. Here is where the library is available. And we download it. I did it before to shorten the demo. And let's see how to install it. Again, we need to unzip the archive, and once it is unzipped, we copy this folder that contains the sources, the references, and the library itself into our sketchbook folder inside this library folder. So we are inside our sketchbook folder, that in your case is probably called just sketchbook. And then inside sketchbook there is a folder called library. And inside this library folder we are going to copy and paste the OSC P5 library. And that's it. The fourth and last step before we can run our setup is to have an open sound control receiver in processing, a sketch that does the job of receiving the open sound control data stream. There are different sketches available on the library websites, and one of them is a receiver. It is called OSC P5 Broadcast Client. This script will receive the data that are sent as a OSC protocol data stream. So we download the script, and once it has been downloaded, we copy it into our sketch sandbox folder. In your case, the sketchbook folder should be called probably simply sketchbook. Inside of it there is a folder called sandbox. Now we need to create a folder with the same name of the sketch that we are going to use. So this is the name of the sketch, and we create a folder with that name, and inside of it we can copy paste the sketch itself, the receiver, the client, the OSC client. Once this is in place, we are ready to run the last step. Let's run. We have all the components in place and we can run our setup now. We have a brain computer interface, an OpenBCI device that is sending brain signals via Bluetooth to our personal computer, where the OpenBCI graphical user interface software is running and is acquiring the data and transforming them from the original format as they comes from the device into the open sound control format, and then is streaming the data out to processing, where the library open sound control P5 enables processing to acquire the data stream inside of the sketch, and so that the sketch then can use the brain signal data going through all this pipeline, can use the data to render and do some animations. Now before we run our setup, I know you can't wait to see this happening. I would like to spend a few words about the open sound control settings that we see here, and a few words about the open sound control protocol, just minimal information, because if something goes wrong now is probably because of these parameters. So having the basic understanding of open sound control will help us to troubleshooting the problem. So let's talk about what's happening in the open sounds control world. We have a software A that wants to send some data to software B, and in order to do so, the software A needs to know the IP address and the port of the software B. Otherwise this won't happen. It's like with the normal mail box. We need to know the address of the receiver. So in our case, the graphical user interface software needs to know the IP address and the port of processing. Now for what it comes to the IP address, as both software are running on the same computer, the IP address is localhost. That in numbers is 127.0.0.1. About the port, we need to set up then the port in the software A where he has to send the message to, and we can know the port where the software B is listening only in the receiver code. So we will look at it right now. Before, just a little note, we in the Open Sounds, the Open Sounds Control Protocol also allowed the software B to send back to the software A a data stream as a feedback. Now, in order to do so, the software B should know the software A address and port. This is a user case in which the software B wants to send a feedback to the software A and is not implemented in our setup. So this connection is not happening, and we are not caring about setting any information about the software A in processing. Okay. So let's go and do the setup that the software A requires in order to send the data to the software B. And so we need to know the address of the software B, the address of the where processing is running, and the port where the processing is listening. So for what the IP address of processing is localhost, that is 127.0.0.1, and so the graphical user interface software is sending the data at the correct address. When it comes to the port, we need to specify here the port of the receiver, so the port where processing is listening to. And we can take a look at the code here, and we can see that the receiver is listening to the port 12,000. So we need to set 12,000 here. Okay, now that it is set, if we run the receiver, we can see that by logs the receiver is listening on port 12,000. Now this script will just log the data that is receiving. There is no animation going on here. I let you do the animation. The purpose of this tutorial for absolute beginners was just like to put together the pieces. Let's see that now when the data stream starts, the data are received from the brain-computer interfaces, transformed into the Open Sounds Control data stream, sent to processing, and processing received those data and logged them into the console log. And here it is. So processing is now receiving the data that corresponds to the alpha, beta, and gamma power, let's say the bands, and is logging the values into the console log. Probably the implementation for neurofeedback would be to use this data inside of the sketch for the animation that you might would like to implement. We are receiving the data from the brain-computer interface in processing, and we can now render an animation based on the data we are receiving. I would say mission accomplished. We have learned how to do it using OpenBCI graphical user interface software. open source control protocol and the open source control library for processing. That's it for today and for this tutorial. And I would like to say thanks again. You can find the slide of this tutorial at this address. And for any question, you can drop an email to info@mindlab.space. That's it for this episode of our tutorial for absolute beginner. See you next time.